All right, welcome back to Extraordinary Unlocked. I'm very excited for our guest here. Alice Choi and I have known each other for years, and she has a tremendous career story and something Alice may or may not have heard. I may have shared the story before, but in college, I actually heard about you before I met you.
Oh,
Somebody was
really?
talking to me and they're like, "Do you know Alice from University of Illinois?" I'm like, "No." And this person was like, "Well, they're basically the female version of you, Eugen." And so I knew about you when I met you. I'm like, oh, I get it. I totally understand why someone would say that. So
That's
Alice,
hilarious.
yes, Alice is a great friend. And Alice has been through so many things, personal, career wise. And when I got a chance to do a quick overview of what she's done in her career, and she's still young, like she's done so many things in the short amount of time, I just had to ask her to be on the podcast, and she's graciously here. So without further ado, Alice, would you mind introducing yourself to the extraordinaires?
Well, thanks so much for having me on the podcast. I'm excited. I'm so excited for kind of what you're doing in the space. And it's amazing to hear how you're really trying to contribute to just society and helping people who are trying to navigate their career journey. My name is Alice Choi. So I don't know how I should title myself. I'm a working mom of four children. And as a title for work, I'm a senior institutional consultant at Fifth Third Bank. So we can dive into a little bit about what I do, but I live in the Chicagoland area, have four beautiful children, have a fiance, and just excited to be here and diving into things.
Awesome. Well, Alice, the first question I always ask everybody is, what was the first job you ever had?
Gosh, as a teenager, as a young kid, my first job was a stalker at Old Navy.
Oh,
And I think I lasted about 2 weeks there. And I think it was my ADD and it was, like, not fun, it was boring, and I was like, "This is not for me," and I quit. And then right after that, I started as a hostess at Bennigan's. I don't Bennigan's
oh
might
my
not be around anymore. Is it?
Yeah, I
Look
don't
it up
know
if
if
it is.
people don't know, Bennigan's is like a local Chicago restaurant that
Yeah.
used to be everywhere, like a TGI Fridays, which no longer exists. But that's
Yeah.
so funny that used to be a hostess. Back in the day, I actually used to work at Abercrombie and Fitch.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And all my kids said, they're like, "Wait, you? You work there?" I said, "Well, this is before they had all the crazy half-naked people being advertised." So,
Right.
and the guy that hired me, he said, "Hey, you wanna work here?" I said, "Yeah, I wanna work here." He said, "You'd be great for the stock room." So I worked in the back. I mean, now
See,
that
we
I
started in the same place, in the stock
I know,
room.
I know. Now that I reflect on it, I'm like, "Man, well, what did he mean by that?" But anyway, let's talk about you after you graduated from the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana with a communications degree, and sort of let's go in the time machine. Walk us through, like, what happened after that?
Yeah. So I got married really young. I was 25 years old, had kids by 26, and I even told my parents that before I went into college, the only goal that I have in college is to get my MRS degree, and that was to get married. And so I set out for that goal. I achieved that goal. I got married young. And honestly, I didn't really have massive goals in terms of career path. I wanted
Hmm.
to be a mom. I wanted to raise children. And like, as a side note, I always had a dream to be on Broadway. So I started off as a music
Oh.
major, didn't go kind of as planned and switched to a communications degree. And so when I got married, I thought that was kind of my end all be all. I was just going to be a mom
Mm.
and I was just going to stay home with the kids. And, living in Illinois, it's not easy to live on one income, right? Let alone raising four children. And so very quickly we realized I needed to have another source of income, right? Or at least have some source of income. And to be honest, when you're a young mom, sometimes it's nice to have like other things that are just yours, right? That aren't just about the children. So I wanted to
Mhm.
start looking for, things that I could do from home, work from home with the kids. So when I was, young in my career, I had started like small side businesses, right? I would my girlfriend and I had made a small little company we called Baby Bean, and we made baby nursing covers, right, for nursing moms because it was something that was very real for our lives. She had four young children also. It was something that we felt like there was a gap in the market, right, for nursing moms to be out in public. And this was like way back when, right? So early 2000s when they didn't really have those things.
Yeah.
So we designed a, nursing cover. We sold it to people that we knew. It did really well. Like people heard about it, would make orders from us and, give it to their friends at baby showers. So we did that for a while. I started a small cookie business. I loved baking. And so I made wedding cakes and I made cookies, like designer cookies for birthday parties, things like that. So I always had this kind of entrepreneurial spirit, wanting to do something on my own. And part of it was I just didn't have the flexibility to work a 9 to 5 when I
Mhm.
had young kids. But that ends up being a lot of labor and not a lot of money. And
Right.
so I started to think, okay, what can I do that has the same, time span that I, don't invest 40 hours a week, but I can still make a decent living. So I started to get into real estate pretty early on and worked as a residential broker for many, many years. I think it was 8 years or so for a few different firms. But it was really a great experience because I got to work part time. I got to work on the weekends while my husband was working during the weekdays. I worked a lot of nights and it worked for our family life balance, right? And so that's kind of how I started in my career path.
I'm so curious because we had mentioned the entrepreneurial part, and I do remember the baby covers, for the nursing moms, and that I did not know about the cookie business or even the wedding cake business, but there is this thread of creativity that you've got, and so I wonder, like, how do you make that jump from I'm gonna just sort of craft my own business to real estate? It just seems like a big jump, and was there a curiosity you had, or like what made you move in that direction?
I always loved real estate. I love watching HGTV, right? It was always fascinating to me. It was always
Yeah.
fun. And I always knew that there was money in real estate. And that in combination with kind of my personality, like I was always trying to figure out in my 20s, what's the right fit career wise for me? I always struggled with that. Even in college,
Mm.
as I was trying to decide a major, I always struggled with, I don't really know what I want to do in the future. I didn't have a sense of like, oh, I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer. This is for me. Nothing really seemed to fit. All I knew was I had a few simple skill sets, and I think I could make money from those skills, right? One is that I'm good with people. I have the ability to connect well with people, communicate well and efficiently. It was a communications major, but those things did well for me and came easily to me. So real estate, it was an interest, number one,
Mm.
that I was interested in. Two, I knew I could make money. And three, it utilized my skill set. So it was just a really good fit for what interested me, and then on top of that, it allowed for those flexible hours that allowed me to be at home with the kids. So that's kind of how I landed on real estate. I tried to assess, like, what's the best fit, and that it
Yeah.
kinda just hit all the marks.
Yeah, and this is something that people listening in may not know about you, but you are such a natural salesperson. I remember when my wife and I, Cynthia, we would get into disagreements and you would learn about it and you became the ultimate salesperson for Cynthia's side. And I almost started saying, you know what? She's got a point. I where Cynthia's coming from. And even to this day, I think there are times when I'm like sort of on the fence about something and you just go, and not that you're intentionally doing it. I think you're hardwired to sell and just to say, "Hey, these are sort of the realities. I mean, what do you think
Yeah.
about this?" I'm like, "Huh, I never thought about it like that." So it makes sense to hear that this natural ability, not only with the communications major, but connecting with people and opening up homes and saying, "Hey, this could be for you in real estate." So that's so interesting to hear that.
Yeah. Because I think a lot of people think of sales as a really negative thing, right? Because they
Yeah.
think of this snake oil type of salesman. I'm pitching you something you don't want and trying to convince you of something that is not a good fit for you. But when you get into dig deeper about sales, sales is really just about understanding people and
Mm,
learning how to communicate effectively. And so when I would show a house, it was never I was trying to sell the best features of the home. It was, hey, these are the things that I see that are great. These are the things that I see that are not so great. Now you based upon what you're looking for, does this fit your needs? And then trying to find the right fit for them. And I think that's a big part of what I do in the way that I communicate sales is it's a lot of just learning how to understand people and their nature and what they're looking for and trying to find right solutions versus, hey, I have product pitch that I'm trying to sell you, and this is what you need to buy. I did a little short stint in life insurance sales for about a year when I think before my third was born. And it just wasn't a right fit for me, right? And so part of it was there's products and quotas that have to be met. And it really felt ingenuine from me and it didn't feel authentic. And so I had
Mm.
a hard talk with myself to say, is this the right fit? And for me, it was not the right fit. And so I think that's okay, right? I think part of learning your career trajectory is knowing what's right for you and what's not, and being okay to say, this is not a good fit. Let's move to maybe pivot to something different.
Yeah, that's a term they use in the tech world is failing fast. And what that means is you realize this is not a path that's workable. It's not sustainable. And so closing the door, realizing quickly that won't work and moving on to what will work. And I'm really curious when you moved into real estate, and you know your hardwiring, and it sounds like you've done a good amount of reflection, self-awareness. What did you learn in real estate, in selling, that was just so natural and resonated with you and your personality and how you naturally meet with people?
It's a time in my career where I thought I would love to be a therapist. You mentioned like your wife and like how we would talk, right? I
Yes.
thought that that was because it was so fascinating to me. I've always had a curiosity about people. I've always wanted
Mm,
to learn about people's stories, and I've always wanted to hear different sides of the equation because the more stories you hear, the more you understand just a wide array of people. So I've always had this natural curiosity about people, relationships. I always thought maybe I could be a therapist, but now I was like, is there enough money in there? And so, kind of navigate that. But I think what I learned in real estate is that selling is just about people, right? And it's just
mm,
about having a genuine curiosity about people. And so that's what I learned a lot from that process was that selling sometimes you try to sell a house and you're trying to close a deal, but if you're not looking out for the client's best interest, it never serves anybody well, right? So there are a lot of times where I would say, this is just let's back out of this deal. I don't think this is the right fit for you, or things are not going the way it should be going. I think this is not a good fit. And you have to be okay with that because in the end, if you're looking out for other people's best interest, it always works out to the benefit. They might not buy today, but they might remember you and say 6 months from now, "Man, she really looked out for us. Let's go back and see if we can buy a house now with her," right? So, those kinds of things relationally, I learned a lot about in that process
mm.
is how do you treat people? How do you stay genuinely curious? And how do you now work that into your business model, right? And so, I think I learned a lot about sales through that process that it's more about relationship than it is about product. And so, which is why I could then take those skills and pivot to any other career. It's not about the house. It's not about what
Yeah.
you're selling. It's about can you take those same skill set and then transition it to different roles?
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect segue because you're moving from selling homes into the finance world. I remember when there was
Yeah.
an update on LinkedIn, like I'm at JP Morgan Chase. I'm like, Alice, there's almost nothing you cannot do. You're just opening doors to other things. And I actually never got the backstory. I applauded it. I was very happy for you. But how do you make that shift from being pretty much opening doors, selling homes to now I'm moving into the finance world, which is candidly a very different place. So
Yeah.
tell me, how did you make that shift? Where did that come about? And what gave you the courage to move into it?
Man, there were a lot of moving pieces that had to work out perfectly. So it was a lot of timing, a lot of really good luck, but I think it was also being open to the possibilities. So I was going through a divorce in gosh, what year was that? 2021. We kind of finalized the divorce. But for a few years before that, we were going through it. And, at the time, I was working like pretty much part time in real estate. And I had thought, okay, if we get divorced, what's my next step? How am I going to support four kids on my own with no insurance and working? I could, increase my hours in real estate and build a team and grow from there, or like, what about insurance, right? And there's no real safety net real estate. You don't have a paycheck coming in every month. It's you eat what you kill.
Yeah.
So there was a little bit of hesitation on my part to continue that career path because it just didn't serve me that well at that point. The kids are now in a school all full time, and I was working nights and weekends, and so it's kind of like a flip flop now, right? Where I would rather have a 9 to 5 and be available for my kids nights and weekends and have insurance and have stability. So again, it's very pragmatic. It was kind of a pros and con list of what I need to do. What do I need to do to sustain like our family life and make sure that I'm okay financially and then make the best choices. So then I started looking at all the job boards. What can I do that maintains my skill set and still makes enough money to support a family of 5, right? So, it was challenging and it was frustrating and it was scary because 'cause you're like, I am now 41 years old and I don't have, many skills outside of the one that I can have, right, is people. Like, I just
Right.
know people and I know how to connect with people. And with no industry experience in any other industry besides real estate, how am I gonna make a pivot, right? That's the challenge.
Mhm.
So I started reaching out to, people on LinkedIn. You don't get a lot of bites. You send out resumes, you don't get a lot of bites.
Right.
And I actually had a client of mine who I was selling a house to. And I was just, we're talking, he was like, oh, how long you've been in real estate? And we're talking about career path. And he was a wholesaler at Wells Fargo. And he's like, you would be a really good fit for our industry. And I was like, I don't even know what a wholesaler is. He's like, well, basically, we help advisors sell mutual funds into their portfolios for their clients into their retirement plans. And I was like, I don't even know what a mutual fund is. And he was like, well, you can learn that. It's just product. It's like, if you can sell a house, you can sell mutual funds, right? And I was like, yeah, but how am I going to get my foot in the door when I have no experience? I have no licenses. I have no background. To be frank, I barely understood the stock market.
Yeah.
So, it was, but he was really adamant. He's like, your personality is a perfect fit for what you would look
Wow.
for in a wholesaler. He's like, why don't you come to a networking event with me? We have one next weekend going on. You could be my guest. And I was like, okay, awesome. I'd love to. And so I went to this networking event where I got to meet a bunch of other wholesalers in the room. I talked to a few advisors and I was just asking, like, I'm just curious, like, tell me a little bit about your role. What do you guys do on the day to day? What are the specific skill sets you're looking for? And it was a really good fit. Like, the more people that I met, I was like, they're people just like me, really people oriented, great relationally, have the ability to get someone to like you really quickly. And so those kind of skills, I'm like, I could do that, right? The only problem is I have no background and no knowledge of the financial world.
Yeah.
So my resume got passed around from a bunch of wholesalers. Everyone was like, oh, yeah, just send me a resume. So I sent a bunch of resumes out. It got into the hands of somebody at JP Morgan, who now is a good friend of mine. She got it and said, actually, ironically, the timing wise, they were just opening a brand new team that was rolling out a new small market product to JP Morgan. And so she got the resume, sent it to my boss then, took an interview. And the first thing he said to me on the phone was, hey, just to let you know, we don't really hire people with no industry experience and we don't hire people without licenses. But as a favor to Mary, I took this, call. And I was like, okay, no problem. And so we just started chit chatting. And 5 minutes in, he's like, you know what? You want to actually go through the interview process? And I was like, okay, sure. So,
Yeah.
like 7 months later, like 7 interviews later, I landed this job at JP Morgan miraculously. And it was funny because when I first started there, the first year, everyone was like, "Oh, you're the real estate girl," because everyone knew that I was the person who didn't have any licenses, had no industry background, but they were willing to take a chance. And I had talked to my boss years later about it, and he said, when he had hired me, he had to actually write up a whole letter to his boss to explain
Wow.
why he was hiring somebody with no experience and no, background because he thought that personality wise it was a good fit. So they were taking a chance. They took a long shot on somebody who didn't have experience. And it ended up being a really good fit for me. And I thrived in it. I enjoyed the material. And I'm not
Mm,
gonna lie, it was a really hard time get when you're 41 years old and trying to pass licenses on
yeah.
subject matter that you have no understanding about, where you're reading the topic and it sounds like you're reading it in Russian. It is so difficult. And so I was, you know, I was going through the divorce. We were during COVID. The kids were all, at home doing school. I was working all day, taking classes at night and studying for exams. And then in 3 months, passed all three exams and then got up and running. It was a grind, but I was willing to put myself through the grind in order to get to the next level because I knew that this was a path that I could expand on and grow in and hopefully flourish. And to be honest, I felt like I had no other choice, right? So I was like, I'm
Mm,
all in. You have to go almost all in to be like, you know what? If I fail miserably, I fail, but I gotta try at least. So that was kind of how I transitioned into more of the finance role. And it wasn't easy, but I'm so glad that I did it.
It's tremendous what you went through, Alice. The life realities of what you're going through, but also the feeling like you're in a corner and like this is my only fighting chance to make a living for my family, to be successful and having a future career path, not just I'm gonna keep opening doors selling homes, but like now I can actually grow my career in the finance world. And I just gotta applaud you. Most people would buckle under that kind of pressure and under that kind of situation. And rather than feeling sorry for yourself or staying in that situation, you literally just, with the resilience you've got back up and said, "This is my fighting chance, and I'm going to fight my way through it." You got the. How many certifications did you have to get?
Well, start from nothing. So I had to start with the SIE exam, which is kind of your base layer for the financial exams that you have to take. And then I had to get my Series 7 exam and then my Series 63. So it was 3 exams in total, and I had 3 months to complete it. So I literally completed an exam every month, which was insane amount of time. And part of it was we were rolling out this new product, and I couldn't talk to clients until I had licenses. So I was only doing back work until I could get actually licensed and approved. So it was like there was like this time crunch. You had to get it done in 3 months. And so, yeah, it was 3 exams, and then I have a few other certifications after the fact, but those were the first three that I had to kind of conquer in the beginning.
Oftentimes, when people start something new, they always go through this part of imposter syndrome, and you'll
Yeah.
hear it really for people starting at a new role, but even in executive levels, they are saying, I'm sort of combating imposter syndrome." And shockingly, even celebrated Hollywood stars that act all the time, that have Oscars, and there are times that they feel imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, was that your experience? What was it like as you got the certifications and now you're starting to see clients? What was that like for you?
Yeah, it's not a was, it's an is, right? Like, we still have imposter syndrome. Like, no matter how much you climb, I think, and I don't know if this is, Asian in me, if it's the female in me, if it's the mom who didn't, have a straight career path in me, but I still feel like I have imposter syndrome. It's still, like, prevalent today. And I think there's always this, like, in the back of your mind, a little bit of doubt, right? Where you're
Yeah.
not feeling like um you are who you say you are, right? I always ask myself, am I bringing my authentic self to the table, right? Am I who I am, right? And I feel like if I get a praise from work or I get a compliment, I always feel a little bit like, what is that really true, right? Or did somebody else play a role in that success, or was it really just me? So I think that's an ongoing battle, right? And you just have to understand that that voice in your head is not always a real voice, right? Sometimes it's your own self-doubt that's creeping in versus it being actual truth, right? And I still struggle with that today. I think it's an ongoing battle with myself. So I just try to hush that side of Alice and
Yeah.
like put her to the wayside, and then try to not listen to that voice. And I think as you get more confident in yourself, it does start to die down. The voice is a little bit less loud, but it's still sometimes there in the background, and that's okay.
Yeah, I totally agree. I asked that question many when I used to run an emerging leader program in my previous organization. It That was the first thing we had to talk about because many of them were like, "Who, me? Can I actually be a leader? I've never been a people leader before." And reminding them that they did not show up on their own accord, like people nominated them. They see something in them, and to encourage them, like you said, turning down the volume.
Yeah.
That volume is set how you wanna set it, and you actually have control over how loud it is and being able to turn that down, and that actually helps so many people overcome this fear of imposter syndrome or whatever you wanna call it, and move into this next role and actually thrive in it. And so a lot of kudos to you, and thank you for your vulnerability. That is so true that we still struggle with it at times, and just getting the more reps, preparing, and not just sitting in it and letting it overcome, but really going through and saying, I've got the ability, I've got the skill, I've got the know-how, and leading in that. And I love that. So thank you for sharing that. So as you go into JP Morgan Chase, when does the real estate girl moniker get removed?
Man, maybe like a year or 2 in.
Which
So, it's funny, I had an opportunity to present on at JP Morgan's sales conference. So every year they have a sales conference of like 700 or so sales
Wow.
people in the entire firm. And they come together every year and they do it at a different location. One year, I had the opportunity, they had asked if I would be willing to kind of like this, share my story on my career journey. And so it was a new session that they were doing at the conference. It was like the last day of the conference. And um, they had asked 4 of us individuals across the firm to speak. And so I was the first one to go, and we had prepped for this for like 5, 6 months. And, at the time, I was so nervous, but I was like, "I can't turn down the opportunity. You get to
Right.
speak at a JP Morgan sales conference. This is a lifetime opportunity."
Right
And
on.
so after that session, I think the real estate moniker maybe kind of went down after that. But I was able to speak on just kind of the transition story that I'm sharing today about career path and journey and, how I've been impactful at JP Morgan and made really great relationships there. But that was a really pivotal moment in terms of career because I think then people started to see me as, oh, this is not a real estate girl. This is a human being who has just transitioned career paths, has a different story than most. And I think most people in that room went the traditional route. They went from business school to an internship to working at the bank and to so forth. And I just didn't have that career path, right? And I think they wanted people to share their story about how it doesn't have to be the traditional way. And then I think that kind of opened the door a lot for more conversations about expanding my role and, kind of climbing the ranks and potential new promotions and things. So that really opened the door there and it expanded, the ability, just the possibilities that were out there.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. And JP Morgan Chase, you go from there and now being at Fifth Third, like how does that even happen?
Yeah, it was funny because I was talking to my boss and a few other people in leadership about potential next steps, right? So I was an internal wholesaler at a desk, like doing calls, selling plans, retirement plans. And after that, the next kind of step in the career path is usually external wholesalers. So we had talked about like, oh, is it a possibility to move to California or to Texas or to take over a territory? And there was no real role open in Chicago because, the people who had stepped into their role were relatively newer in the role. And so, they were like, well, are you open to moving? And I'm like, you know what? To be honest, I've got 4 kids here. I just don't think I could make the transition. So at the time, somebody in my organization had gotten recruited from a Fifth Third recruiter and said, hey, would you take this interview for this role in Chicago? And my coworker at the time was like, you know what? I don't plan on staying in Chicago. She wants to move out. Do you want to take this, interview? I
Hmm.
was like, okay, I'm not open to hearing what other people have, going
Yeah,
on.
right.
So when I talked to the recruiter, she was like, we don't really have a role open here. We just are trying to see like what's out there and if people are interested in coming in. And so as I was sharing about my background and what I do at JP, she was like, well, we're looking for somebody who can, flip to the other side. So I'm at JP Morgan. I was a wholesaler for record keeping platforms for retirement plans as well as mutual fund wholesaler. But at Fifth Third, they wanted me to switch to the advisor side. So I would be able to see just a different lens of retirement plans on the flip side as an advisor and then selling advisory platforms, basically, the advisory services at Fifth Third. So I was like, okay, let's listen more. I went through the interview process, same thing. 5, 6 interviews later, they're like, "Okay, do you wanna come on board?" And then I had to make the hard decision. I think that was the hardest decision that I had to make
Yeah.
career-wise was I felt very loyal to JP Morgan. I felt like they gave me such a great starting, opportunity. I felt very thankful for the chance to pivot in my career through them, and I loved the team that I was on. I loved the leadership. And so it was a really hard decision to make a change, right? But I thought, okay, next step wise, career wise, what do I want to do, right? And how do I want to achieve that while still being able to be in Chicago? And I had to make that hard choice to just make the move because I thought that was the best next step career wise. And then this has now opened the door to a wider, view of services on the financial spectrum, advisory services, institutional services. We do custodial accounts, escrow business, institutional investment management. So my wheelhouse of knowledge has really grown through this new role, which has really been a huge benefit as career wise. And so that was a really hard decision, but it was, I think, the right one.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's so incredible to hear, and it almost feels like there's this common thread of things sort of showing up at the right time, and you had mentioned that in the beginning, right time, right place, and believe it or not, all of these career stories that I hear about, it is so similar to that, where there is just the right timing, the right place, doors open, and things sort of occur, and so I hope that's some inspiration to folks that are listening, and I'll be honest, like, there are times when you're in the grind and you're like, "It's never gonna open, nothing's gonna happen," and I know in the short conversations I have on Extraordinary Unlocked, it almost seems like, yes, and this bloomed and this bloomed, but, I'm sure that in the midst of that, there was a lot of, "When will it happen? Will it
Oh,
happen?"
yeah.
Was that your experience too?
Sure. It sounds like, "Oh, it just landed in my lap." It wasn't like that at all. It was a year-long, maybe two-year-long process of talking with leadership at JP Morgan about next steps. And then it was looking on job boards, seeing what's out there, kind of being open to discussions, applying for a few
Yeah,
things, nothing really landing. So it was a few years of really kind of searching and doing soul searching and thinking about next steps while you're doing your job well, right? So it's not this I don't think it's how people perceive it to be like, "Oh, this just landed in my lap and, oh, I looked at it, took it, and just moved forward," right? It's this
yeah,
self-discovery mode for a few years of trying to figure out what you wanna do, and then being open to the possibilities. And when you're open to it, and not necessarily that you're going to move or make a change, you're open to it, I think things do happen and land in the right timing and the right opportunities will come before you. So I just, as long as you have an open mindset that, hey, I'm willing to hear what other opportunities are out there. And I actually had this discussion with an old leader at JP Morgan before he left. He took over at a new role as a head of a department. He had told me the same thing. We had met for lunch and he's like, Alice, it's, I understand your loyalty to JP Morgan, but you have to understand that, when you think about your career path, you've got to think about your next step always. Always be open. He's like, you think that as a senior leader, I don't take interviews or I don't take calls for opportunities? He's like, I take them every single day. He's like, because you never know what the next door will open. So just be open to possibilities. And I think sometimes people get so tunnel vision and like, oh, I want to be an external wholesaler. This is my only goal and this is the only path
yeah.
I want to be on versus saying, you know what, let's see what else is out there. Just be open to what's out there. And sometimes the right doors will open for you.
Yeah, and it's so helpful to hear there are folks that have that level of loyalty, and in today's day and age, there's so many companies just shedding jobs
Yeah.
in the spirit of AI. And so just to be proactive about your career, proactive of what else is out there, what else could I be? But I don't want people to miss what you also did is a keen alignment to your personal values of what you really wanted. Oftentimes people feel like I need to sacrifice my values, my family in order to get the career that I really, really want to hit the financial numbers. But as you shared your story, there's this consistency of I've got to take care of my family. I've got to take care of my kids. I'm not going to move to California or Texas to do this, which would have been a great career opportunity.
Oh, yeah.
But I want to have a foundation for my family and being able to still explore what else is out there. And I'm
Yeah.
so grateful that you were able to land something that resonates, that you're expanding yourself, your career, your knowledge, your capabilities, and that's wonderful. And so and you already gave some really great advice, but if there's somebody that, and I want to talk to anyone that may be the stay-at-home mom
Yeah.
or the person that is just like, I've tried a few things and nothing's really working. But one thing that I heard throughout your story is just, I'm great with people. I know how to connect with people. I know how to communicate. What piece of advice would you give to those folks that feel stuck? Like, I don't know what I could do. I haven't worked in 5 or 10 years staying home with my
Yeah.
family, my kids. Like, what should I do? What would you tell that person?
Yeah, I have a few friends going through that now. Like they're going through this transition of their kids are grown and like not knowing what to do with their next, the next 10, 15 years. And I think it's never too late. That's the beauty of life, right? Is that we always have an opportunity to change and pivot. And sometimes people feel like that's a bad thing, right? But it's not. I think it's an exciting thing. I always look at life as this is a great opportunity to learn something new. I think
Yeah.
my advice would be is figure out two things. One, what you really enjoy doing, right? Because that's important. Because if you don't enjoy it, you're going to be burnt out pretty quickly. And then two, what are you really good at, right? And sometimes those two things are not the same thing, right? I really love baking, and I think I'm pretty good at it, but at the same time, that didn't provide a ton of money. And so that was very important to me, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes it is the same thing and it just doesn't work out, right, in that aspect. But like there are other things. I love singing. I'm okay at it, but I'm not excellent. So am I going to be a musician, right? It's like those are things that you have to figure out. The thing that I really enjoy is I love connecting with people, and I
Yeah.
think I'm really good at it. And so that's something that you can monetize, right? That you can pivot into a career path. Some things you can't always monetize, right? So those are things that I would evaluate is what are you good at? What do you really enjoy doing? And then can you monetize it, right? And so that for me was sales. It worked out really to my advantage. For others, maybe like maybe you really enjoy tending to the sick and and you're maybe hesitant to go down that nursing path. We had a friend, right, Jomsi, who
Oh,
started her
very
nursing path when she was in her 40s. She went to nursing school,
great.
I think in her mid 40s, if I
That's
remember
right.
correctly,
Mhm.
as her kids were getting older. And, it was hard. It was hard to go back to nursing school and do it. But that was something that, and she says to this day, she loves it. She loves her career journey and she's so happy that she did it. So I think don't be afraid to make a change. Don't be afraid to try new things and don't be afraid to fail because I think that's something that holds us back the most is that we're so scared that what if I can't do it? Or what if nobody will hire me? Or what if just go all in. And if you fail, it's just a closed door and it just means you have to pivot to something different. Doesn't mean that it was a wasted time, right? You learned something new about yourself. You tried something new. And even if it didn't come to fruition, that journey is worth it, right? Because you learn so much about yourself with that process. So find out what you like, find out what you're good at, take risks and try it. Just go all in, try something new.
I love that. Thank you so much for the advice. Thank you for being on Extraordinary Unlocked. I know that there are folks out there that feel stuck in that situation. And I hope that you are inspired as you listen to Alice's story of following your curiosity, knowing what you're really good at and how to capitalize on it and monetize it. So thanks for sharing that. We've entered our lightning round and I've got some questions for you that I didn't prep you for. So, as many people heard, you're very creative, baking, sewing, and I wanted to know what is a craft or a baked good that you're working on currently? And you're like, I just want to try this thing out. What are you doing?
Well, I fell into the sour bread era, right? Sourdough.
Nowadays?
And so I have been making sourdough religiously and I probably make it every single weekend and I still to this day I'm expanding recipes. So I'm always trying to figure out better recipes. But I always go back to the same old recipe over and over again. It's either sourdough bread or sourdough pizza. That's my
Oh,
go-to
man,
right
those sound
now.
wonderful. You talked about being in musicals, you talked about the singing career that never really came to fruition, but that means you probably still love watching musicals. What
Oh
is a
yeah.
musical that you love to this day?
Oh, Miss Saigon is probably always going to be my all-time favorite. I've loved it since I was in junior high. And there was a short stint of a musical called Aida. It's not on Broadway, I don't think anymore, but I really loved that musical. That was a long, long time ago, though.
Okay, all right. And then last question. I know that you love to cook, but hey, let's just be honest. When you're working full time, when Friday night comes around, you're like, oh no, we need to get carry out. What's your go-to carry out joint for your family?
Oh, well, for my family, it's probably McDonald's because it's something that everybody loves. For
Okay.
me, though, it's Taco Bell. I love Taco Bell. Like I think I had it last night. When I don't have the children and I don't want to cook, Taco Bell is my almost number one go-to. I know
That
that
is
sounds horrible
Cynthia
because it's not
that
good
is
food for
Cynthia's
you.
go-to. All she loves Taco Bell. And a
See?
fun our oldest child after prom, do you know where he went? Taco Bell. He was so happy. I'm like,
Yes.
"Nice. Really?
I
That's
love Taco
cool.
Bell. Yep.
That is
That's
so
my
funny."
go-to.
Well, Alice, thank you so much for sharing your story. It's been an absolute joy, a wild ride that's still not done yet. Still many more years to go. But thank you for sharing with the extraordinaires. Really appreciate it. Hope everyone enjoyed it. We'll talk next time. Thank you.
Bye-bye.